still am in touch with, a lot of people I served with, a lot of Afghanistan vets that I've met since, and some of whom I met last year during the fall of Kabul and our attempts to help get people out. But I noticed then, and I notice now, a year later, there's a peak. There's an increase in mental health issues among a lot of them. I think the moral injury to our veterans has been grave and has resulted in, sort of even worse mental health outcomes for people. I was actually talking to a friend of mine who served multiple tours in Afghanistan last night, who told me he'd started having panic attacks again, and he's been home for like 5 years now. For a lot of us, it's not over. It hasn't stopped. We've been in touch with people over a year now, still trying to help them to get out, if not to the US, at least to a third country. These are people that we've committed to. We've looked them in the face and said, I will not forget about you. And, every day it seems like there are new people that pop up on email, on LinkedIn, on WhatsApp, asking for help, desperate, moving house to house. So it's not over.
So it's not over. What I know that some of the stories that I heard back a year ago were of people who had been interpreters, people who had literally had Americans basically living in their houses, working with them, just hand in glove, and they were being desperately trying to get to the airport. They were literally putting their lives and their families' lives in their hands, trying to get to the airport, taking all sorts of long, covert routes, crawling through ditches and everything else to get there. And yet for some reason, the Biden administration didn't seem to have any idea who should be let out and who should not be let out. It seemed like it was really haphazard. What was your experience in trying to deal with the Biden administration to try to get people out? Were they? I mean, how did that work? You obviously spent a lot of time interacting, trying to help people.
Yeah. So there were so many false starts that way. Then there were also people who had been waiting at the Abbey Gate, which, everyone knows about. There had been a lot of people waiting at the Abbey Gate for days and days and days. We've been told, tell your Afghan allies to show up there, and they'll be let out at that time, or they'll be let in at that time. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Even with people who had a lot of documents with them, they had everything that was required. There was just such a huge mass of people, they couldn't get close enough. And then over a period of days, the weather was so hot. People were there with their families. Their family members were passing out from the heat. There was no water. And so some people gave up, and they went home and they said, we'll come back tomorrow. Well, I think those of us back in the US we didn't want to tell them, but I think we kind of knew, like, this is your chance. Either you stay there, you're not going to get out, and I don't even know if you're going to get out if you stay there. Right. But yes, I only know the stories of the people that I interacted with, but I can tell you there's one family, happily, this is a happy ending. They're not too many, but this was one. The father, the husband, had actually gotten blown up in previous service and was a double amputee. He didn't have any legs. He had prosthetic legs. And I found out later, I had the opportunity to meet him, which several months ago, which was sort of emotionally overwhelming for me in a good way. I can't imagine they're just happy to be here, he and his family. But he had traveled to the U.S. after his injury to Texas, and he had gotten prosthetic limbs, 2 prosthetic legs. They had fitted them for him. He had learned how to use them and how to walk on them. And actually, it's so beautiful. The people who built these prosthetics for him had actually put in the cushion. If you pull up the kind of front top cushion, they put the American flag inside. So he had that in his prosthetics with him. So imagine what would have happened to him if the Taliban had seen those. So he actually, the story that, as I understand it, that he told is that he sold his car to get enough money to go to Kabul. They were in their home village, and he walked with his wife and children for days to get to Kabul. I don't know how many days, like 3 days, 5 days, unimaginable. But it just shows you the level of desperation that they felt. So they finally made it to the Abbey Gate, and they were not able, just with the push of people there, they were not able to get up front to the gate. So we had troopers on the inside that were looking for him and his family, but they just couldn't see them because there was just a sea of people as they were looking down from the wall. So his handler told him, take off one of your legs and lift it up in the air. And that's how they'll be able to identify you. And I'm getting chills as I'm telling you this story right now, but that's exactly what happened. He took off one of his prosthetics, his prosthetic limbs and he waved it in the air, and that was how they were able to identify him. And they brought him up to the gate and inside the airport. And so he and his family thankfully made it out, and they are living here in the U.S. now.
Let me ask you, is there a continuing effort to try to help people get out?
Yes, there is. So if you don't mind,
don't talk about anything you can't talk about, but
no. So first of all, I feel like I'm here today speaking on behalf of all the people who can't speak because they still have their hands tied by the government. Either they're still in the military, or they still work for the government, or they're government contractors and they're afraid they'll lose their contract if they speak out. That's very, very real. I know a lot of people who took leave during that time because they were given a direct order: do not stand down, do not do this. And there are some service members who have since retired and have come out and started talking about this. But there are so many more who are still sort of, their hands are tied and they can't speak. So was I killing myself? No, I didn't sleep for a couple of weeks, but I was in the living room of my house, on my phone. I wasn't killing myself. Afghanistan, for all of us who have served there and had the honor of working with some of the most giving, incredible people that we've ever met in our lives. My first tour was in 2005, and I don't want to go into all the details of that, but I worked with some incredibly brave Afghan leaders who, by the time of our withdrawal last year, had all long since been killed. So personally, I didn't have people that I had worked with that I knew that were still there. I mean, they were all dead. And that was something that I was already, you struggle with that anyway. But this was something I wanted to help. Both of my brothers served in the Marine Corps. One served in Iraq, one served in Afghanistan. And I just, this is the right thing for us to do. This is who we are as Americans. Even if our government is betraying us in this way, it doesn't change the true nature of who we are. and that's still going to shine through and hopefully provide an example and provide a message. So yeah, I mean, I think I know that there are still thousands, tens of thousands of people, in, according to that congressional report, who are still there, and I don't want to put anyone in any more danger than they're in, but there are. I'll just say there are ongoing efforts, and there are groups that were formed a year ago. These kind of loose knit groups, like the one that I was in, that are really formalized now and have been desperate for donations for the last year, because those donations are funding safe houses where people have to move. They have to move all the time. Food, fuel for moving them.
So to put sides of that, so you've been on both sides. How do you deal with the sense that there's a purpose? Was it all just a waste of time?
This is a physically painful question to answer for me, and probably for a lot of my fellow veterans. I find a lot of well-meaning people's kind of attempts to make things sound better a little. It just feels empty to me. With respect, I feel that. So you asked me how I feel.
Yeah, I'm trying to get. This isn't a couch,
yeah.
But I want to get
No. I mean, I think the question, what was it for, is a valid question to ask. And by the way, I served in Iraq too. I lost a lot of friends. A lot of really, really good people are not here anymore because they believed in what they were doing. We have an all volunteer military. And by the way, it's not just the military, it's our intelligence community. And we had a lot of law enforcement out there as well, serving. Many actually DEA lost a large number of people over there. So I think it's important to note all of that and to recognize, for me, I'm really angry. I'm really, really angry. And I'm sad and I'm still mourning and all that, but I'm so angry. And I demand accountability. And I think if people really, feel for veterans and feel sorry about what happened, help us get accountability. That's what we need. I think nobody resigned. Nobody admitted fault in any of this. Everything, what did the Secretary of Defense say? Everything was done perfectly. This was an excellent operation. BS, excuse me. But look at that congressional report. The U.S. government, led by the State Department, because they were the lead in this NEO, they had no intention of getting any Afghans out, and they lied about it all the way through. And that's unacceptable. We made promises that, because we believed what our government was telling us, we made promises to Afghans, to our partners, based on lies, and we demand accountability. And so for me, that's where I'm focused. I hope the new Congress, when they come in, they do hearings, they present publicly all the information that is available, they can find and declassify, on exactly what happened and what decisions were made when. Because I guarantee you, there are generals who ordered that gates not be allowed to open. I guarantee you, there were senior commanders who would not let planes fly into certain places. And all of that has been covered up. And it's a disgrace, and it all needs to come out, or else you've lost this entire generation of people who stood up and raised their hands after 9/11. And but at a strategic level, what's the reason, in my opinion, why and all of that is extraordinarily important. But what's even more spectacular is the John Kerry's and Joe Biden's and all of the great Democrat foreign policy experts have said since the beginning of time, because they're all about that old. They've said since the beginning of time, like, you can't have peace in the Middle East without the Israel Palestine issue being resolved. That's the seminal issue that needs to be resolved. Without it, there's no peace. Okay, that's not true. That's clearly fake. That's fake news. And that's, to me, really what was extraordinary. They were wrong. And we showed they were wrong. The region showed they were wrong. And in fact, for a long time, quietly, the Gulf states had been saying, the Palestinians, they didn't want continuous war. The Gulf states didn't want continuous war in the region. They want peace. They want stability. They want economic prosperity. And they just, after a while, they said, you know what, Abbas, the Palestinians, they're not serious. They're never going to accept anything except for no Israel. And that's not realistic. Israel's here to stay. So we're going to recognize Israel. And that's what happened. Really sort of tragically, the Biden administration, hasn't been able to get away from its old view of the world, which it has proven to be that is not reality. But in many instances, including with this Iran deal, they refuse to accept reality and continue to live in a world of their own design, an imaginary world. And so, yes, of course, they've acknowledged the Abraham Accords are good, but at the same time, with their negotiations with Iran, with the allowing Iran to get access to funds that they did not have access to under the Trump administration, like, Iran is back, and they're really dangerous, and the Gulf states have had to make peace with Iran because they have no choice. I mean, if you've ever traveled to UAE, for example, you can see Iran. It's right there. So they're living in the real world. And so last week, they sent an ambassador over. They've reestablished formal diplomatic relations with Iran because they have to. They have no choice. And we've put them in that situation. The Biden administration has.